All right, it's 4:30 and we'll call to order the Dunn County Judicial and Law Committee. Call the roll. Carl is excused and everybody else is here, so. Item 3, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion by Gilberts, second by Jetson. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Minutes pass. Any public comments? Okay. And number 5, we'll move on to staff reports, and first up is Sheriff.
Nothing to add specifically to my report unless you have questions, but I do have a little more explanation about the budget adjustment resolution when we get to that.
I guess since Jenna's here, there's you wrote about better pay.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the proposed new wage grid. We can't recruit and retain jail staff now, and I'm certainly not going to help if they don't know what they're going to make moving forward. Yeah, it's going to be a challenge.
Is that something we approved, or is it? Do you want to talk about it? Okay.
So we proposed that the 2026 plan to the Committee on Administration last Thursday, just for their review. They didn't take action on it, but we were enlisting their feedback and guidance, and they would then take action at the July meeting. I can speak to the sheriff's office specifically and just say that we have been working together pretty closely. We have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow as well to review some options as it relates to jail employees specifically.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is the jail staff on a pay grid similar to what the deputies are on, or?
The patrol deputies have a collective bargaining agreement, was what, determines their wage throughout the length of the bargaining agreement. The jail staff, the non-sworn, are all on a pay grid similar to the rest of the county employees. So it's currently an 11-year pay grid. I don't remember where they're at on it right now. But they follow the same pay grid as the rest of the county. Yeah, not necessarily all of the sheriff's office. Right now we have a collective bargaining agreement with the union. So, but it does affect everybody that's non-union, which includes my patrol supervisors, my captains on both sides, and all my jail staff and clerical staff, with a new proposed wage, establishing a new wage adjustment.
How does Dunn counties compare to similar counties as far as wages for jail staff?
We're trying to be competitive with starting wage. Sometimes I have some flexibility that I can start them at step 3, but if they've got some experience, our starting wage, last I looked, is below most of the surrounding counties. Of course, we're not going to compare to St. Croix. We'll never catch up to St. Croix, either on patrol or in the jail. So we're trying to be competitive with places like Eau Claire and Chippewa that, are paying a little bit more. Now we're dealing with the prison system that gave their sergeants or their corrections officers about a $15 an hour pay bump. They're about, probably. We were interviewing people that worked for the prison system because we were actually paying more for a while. But in the last 6 to 8 months, they got a pay bump about $15 an hour. And so they're making about $40 an hour. And so nobody's going to leave the state to come and work for me.
No.
So.
Is there an average, like a state average or county average that we compare to at all across this
Well,
State.
we try and use our comparables of similar,
similar type
yeah.
counties?
Barron County is about as close to a similar county, even though they don't have interstate system running through their
Uh-huh.
county and stuff, but population wise and employee size wise,
Okay.
we're very similar. Barron, Chippewa, Eau Claire, are really our comparables. You gotta take St. Croix and Pepin out of the mix because you're on the high end and on the low
On
end.
the low end,
You know,
okay,
so,
okay. And compared to those, we're lower, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
we need to maintain,
right,
where we're at to try and stay competitive with them.
thank you.
Yes.
You're one day ahead of me, Sheriff. I did plan to provide you with a recommendation that we received from our consultants as it relates specifically to jail positions. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. But the comparables that they use include Barron County, Calumet County, Chippewa County, Clark County, Columbia County, Dodge County, Douglas County, Eau Claire County, La Crosse County, Lincoln, Oneida, Polk, Portage, Shawano. They do have St. Croix, but that's because there's such a big mix. Taylor, Washburn, Wapaka, and Wood counties. So based on those, we've reviewed kind of where we land in like the 25th percentile, the 50th percentile, or the 75th percentile for correctional officers, jail sergeants, and patrol sergeants. And we have a recommendation that I want to go over with you tomorrow. So hopefully we can mitigate any concerns as it relates to those roles specifically.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, Sheriff.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to courts.
The only additional thing that I need to add is I had an offer for a position and the person did not accept the offer. So we are now recruiting for a full-time deputy clerk position. I was excited that I could use the individuals that applied for our part-time deputy clerk position. I had two of them that we re-interviewed and did a job offer, and then the other one it just didn't work out for. So we're recruiting. Posting comes down tomorrow, I believe. So I'm hoping that we get some good applicants and we can see where we go from there. Other than that, I don't have anything else to add unless there's questions.
Nope, doesn't look like it. Thank you. We'll move on to CJCC.
Nothing to add unless there's questions.
Doesn't look like it. Thank you. Next is District Attorney.
Yep, nothing to add unless there's any questions.
I was just wondering, a lot of legal. Could you just summarize kind of what happened here?
Sure. It's been in the appellate system for a long time. I have a really sad case, and I think part of why I wanted to share it is sometimes it's just really hard to watch what kids go through, not the sexual assault themselves, but through our criminal justice system. In this case, the victim's family completely ostracized her. She had a rough childhood, all, kind of familiar with our system. Parents that use drugs and bad family home life. And then she attempted suicide and left a note about what had happened to her. So then she was transferred to Minnesota, where at a children's hospital where a forensic interview was conducted. And then at the jury trial, because she was under the age of 12, filed a motion with the court to have that played at the jury trial, and that was granted. And so The person who interviewed her, though, was no longer working for the hospital, so we had her supervisor testify. This was back when Judge Smeltzer asked if the parties wanted the juries to ask questions. I was all for it because it's helpful to know what a jury's struggling with, what they're not struggling with, to address with further witnesses. But one of the jurors asked, how really in these cases, all you have is the victim's word, right? There's no physical evidence, there's no witnesses, there's usually a delay of years. And so the juror asked, how common is it for children to basically falsely disclose or make up a story that they were sexually assaulted? And the expert said, it's extremely rare. And then the follow-up question to that was, and why would someone do that? And the expert said, I don't really have an answer to that. I can't read people's minds. So there's a case law that says a witness can't say, I believe that, Sarah's telling the truth. I believe her because she's a truthful person. You can't say that. And so that was the defense's argument, because when the defendant was convicted, her testimony was a lot of the evidence that we had. It was basically her forensic interview and then her testimony in court in front of the courtroom was packed full of people who didn't believe her. And so it was really heartbreaking to see. And so it's the Hazeltine rule. And so that they were trying to argue that was a Hazeltine violation because she said it's really rare that someone would ever make that up. So then we had a hearing here about whether it was ineffective counsel. I think it was a public defender appointment, but then private attorney took on the appointment. So once you have the conviction, then I think a year later we had the hearing where we had the attorney testify. And then we had to file briefs, and then we had a ruling on that. And then Court of Appeals went on for a couple of years, and then it's now Supreme Court. So anyway, it was just an interesting case, and I never thought I'd have a case that went to the Supreme Court. And it was really interesting I was not able to go down to Madison to watch it, but they have it all online, and it was fun to hear. It was the appellate motion or Supreme Court. The defendant was represented by Aaron Nelson, who we see sometimes here, and his legal writer, Robert Maxey, and they were just firing questions at him. So it was interesting, not the type of law we normally have. It reminded me being back in law school where they fire questions at you. But yeah, so really, really grateful for this decision. As I said in my written report, I've never had a victim jump up and down, yay, this makes it right. It's just kind of, you go through this whole system and it's just yeah, it's a conviction, but it really doesn't make it go away. I've never really seen a victim feel yep, I can move on now. It's just sort of okay, great, they believed me. So anyway, it was exciting to see this, and I'm glad I had to convince or petition the Attorney General's office to take it to even try to have it go to the appellate court. So for a while, once the Court of Appeals decision came out, he was going to be released from prison. And then I had to talk to the AG's office to be whoa, this is not right. And so I'm really grateful for the AG's office for willing to take it on and fight for it. And they did a really good job. And so did the justices when I listened to the oral arguments. Oh, thanks.
Yes, thank you for that explanation. So, any other questions? Okay, we'll go on to child support. Josie?
I forgot to put on there that tomorrow I have my annual audit review with the state. It seems like I just had my triennial last summer, and it's apparently been a whole nother year. So the annual is just a much quicker check-in to make sure I'm on track to pass the 3-year audit, which will be here before you know it. So.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to emergency management.
The only thing I wanted to add is that I did do a requisition to fill one of my vacant positions that was approved last Wednesday, and I'm just waiting for the HR department to go ahead and post that for recruitment. So hopefully we can keep on the hiring train. We're still 2 telecommunicators short plus the supervisor position. So we at least got that far and got the requisition approved, and hopefully we'll get that posted soon. So that's all I have to add to the report unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Sorry.
Where are we on the hazard mitigation plan? I see there's confirmed approval. What,
Well, we have a resolution coming up later on the agenda. It has not been officially approved or officially taken away. And so we thought maybe the step was to at least go through the process of getting a budget adjustment so that when we receive official word that it is hopefully approved, because that is the way it's leaning, that we would be ready to move forward with the process. Like Dan had mentioned, like if we don't have a line item in the budget,
Right.
we really can't start the process. So the thought process was to go ahead and just get a budget, a budget adjustment, get it in there. And so when we receive official documentation, that we can just go ahead and start moving forward. Right after our last meeting, I think it was like the next week, we received an email from the state WEM office saying, if it was in 2004, it's denied, and if it's 2003, it's still up in the air. Well, when you look at our application, we actually applied the end of 2003. So there's still hope. There's still hope that we will actually have it approved. The only one that was officially denied was the 2024 one that we did apply for, which was to work on some Chippewa River embankment issues. That one has been denied and will no longer move forward, but the 2023 has not been officially denied or approved. So we're just kind of doing this process just to kind of make sure we're ready when we get the notification.
okay, so this is not the brick grant FEMA money, or it is?
It is
Okay,
still associated with the brick grant, yes.
okay, all
Yep.
right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll move on to medical examiner. None. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, we'll move on to items placed at the request of the chair. None. Item 7. Nothing there. Item 8, consideration of reports, resolutions, and ordinance to the county board from the Judiciary and Law Committee. First up is a budget adjustment for 911 and emergency management. Do we have a motion? Motion by Welsh. Do I have a second? Second by Jetson. Discussion. And so this is just what you were explaining before, right?
Actually, it's kind of 2 in 1.
Okay.
So, so part of it is the hazard mitigation brick grant that we would be prepared for if it is approved. If it's not approved, then the line item would just go unused. So that is the $38,164. $272,192.37 is the NG 911 grant, which I think I've been talking about for a couple years. There's been a couple different phases of it. There was an amendment to it, and so this is the final numbers for that NG 911 grant and what we need to complete that process. So the total budget adjustment would include both of those line item changes.
The hazard mitigation grant, it's just saying we're approving it. We're not moving forward.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, you're just putting it in the budget, but we're not moving forward. Just hopefully prepared when we get that notification.
Since I'm still new, can it, the 9G, the NG 911 grant just is, can you tell me briefly what that?
Sure. Sure. So, it's just a process that the state, I'm going to say mandate, that they're mandating that we move forward with changing the way we're processing 911 calls. So if you go back 20 years, landlines, which hardly anybody has anymore, people could call 911, but you did not have any addresses associated with them. And then we went enhanced. It was called enhanced 911, which meant when you called 911 from your landline, your actual address would fill in. And so now things are changing, technology is changing. And so now, it's just better information that will feed in with XY coordinates. We're working GIS, and it also is wrapping in text to 911. Possibly videos to be sent in to 911. So it's going to encompass a lot of things. And then also the state kind of put in a little structure to some 911 centers. Some 911 centers do not use emergency medical dispatch procedures. So when you call 911, they may not offer assistance with some directions on some traumatic calls. And so they're putting that in. So there's a little bit consistency around the state to use the similar practices in the counties, so that if you're in Dunn County, you're getting a very similar service than you would if you were in Eau Claire County or Barron County. So it was kind of a lot of things all wrapped into one in this NG 911.
Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The budget adjustment passes. Next, item B, budget adjustment for the sheriff office. Do I have a motion? Motion by Jetson. Second by Gilberts. Discussion.
I'll give you a little background on the touch on the $3,000 one. First was a grant awarded from Wisconsin County Mutual Insurance for the purchase of personal safety lighting. It's called a Guardian Angel. It's like a miniature light bar that goes on the deputy's shoulder. So when they're out on traffic control, they can push a button and there's red and blue lights that flash to the rear and white to the front. It's just added safety protection. So we were awarded a $3,000 grant to buy one of those for each one of the staff, patrol staff. The second portion probably needs a little more explanation. And my apologies, I was on vacation, and then when I got back from vacation last Monday, I was doing corrections interviews. So Marshall, my chief deputy, added this one on because we received a check from the Community Foundation for $7,000. So I had to get it in, so the packet in, and it wasn't until the next day that I got the letter along with the check explaining what it was for. But Georgina Taggart from the Community Foundation met with me a month or two ago and asked if there was any specific needs for officer wellness that we had. And I explained to her that if I had, because she had an anonymous donor that wanted to do something for law enforcement. So I explained to her that what I would like to do is bring a gentleman back by the name of Kent Williams. He does breach point training. And it's a 2-day or a full day seminar for 2 days to get all of my staff through it, along with Menominee PD, my corrections and patrol staff, and offer it to 911. But I said, it's not cheap, but here's what, ideally what I'd like to do is bring him back. I had him here a couple of years ago. I've seen the man 3 or 4 times in my career, and he really changes your perspective on home life, work life balance, and So I didn't hear anything more from her until we received a check for $7,000 and then a letter explaining this is what it's for. It was for the breach point training that she and I had talked about, but I didn't get any email confirmation back from her after we had talked. She just asked me to send her an estimate and which I did. So that's $7,000 from an anonymous donor, technically through the community foundation to pay for that breach point training.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the budget adjustment? Aye. The budget adjustment passes. Next, we'll move on to announcements. The only announcement is we'd like to change the date of the August meeting to August 18th because Katie is going to be gone on the 25th. Is that okay with everybody? So the August meeting will be the August 18th. All right, and our next meeting is July 28th in the same room. And we are adjourned.
Done it both ways, you know?
Yeah.
Or is it backed up?